Well, that's more like it.
All right. Technology's great when it works.
When it works, yeah. What's happening? How are you, man?
I'm doing excellent. How are you?
I'm very well, very well. So listen, I did I can't edit this when we post it on Facebook, so I'll go through this whole thing again. But I did such a glowing tribute to you before you got on here. I'll do it again. I even wrote it, right, so that I could write it out, right? So, okay, let's do this officially. Hello, everyone. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel. Welcome to today's show. This is episode number 3 of the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues. My guest today is well-known Jeet Kune Do instructor and author Kevin Seaman. Now, I said of Cortland, New York. Is that true?
No, I live in Syracuse.
Okay, all right, Okay, so to me, Kevin's a very interesting guy because of how he's maneuvered through the world of martial arts and the world of self-development. He's owned a full-time school. He's operated a multi-day, multi-instructor martial arts camp. He's written books, he's shot DVDs, and he's brave enough to spend a lot of time on a college campus in today's political climate, right? So in short, he's done it all and he continues to do so. So I'm very excited to dialogue with him today.
Thank you, Dwight. It's great to be here.
All right. So listen to this. In doing my research for today's show, I discovered that you are an affiliate for Brian Tracy International.
That's correct.
Well, check this out. You want to see something funny? These were readily, right? Readily. Look at this stuff.
Mm-hmm. I love it. That's
Isn't
a
that
great
something?
one. Yeah. Yeah.
Look, right? So here's what I want to ask you. When I was running my school, Brian Tracy, his teachings played an enormous role in what we did, and all of my team members received a copy of his book, Maximum Achievement.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
very familiar with it.
Yeah. Okay. Did you ever make use of that book in your own doing?
I've made use of much of Brian's material. Where it came from, I wouldn't be able to pinpoint. You know, he's written 200 books.
Right.
My very favorite is Goals.
Yes.
I love the book Goals. It's fantastic.
Okay.
But Brian, the thing I like about Brian is he's kind of a JKD guy, really, in the mindset of personal achievement.
Yeah.
Because he cuts through all the BS and goes directly to the core.
Right.
And not the most flamboyant speaker, but his material is phenomenal. I mean, he's not like Tony Robbins. Where he's,
well, yeah, nobody's as flamboyant.
Material, phenomenal.
Yeah. And didn't he start out as a ditch digger?
He failed school. Well, basically, he got a leaving certificate from school.
Mm-hmm.
He never passed his high school education, never got his diploma. But then he started working really hard, and later on he found out that, he's working way too hard for what he's able to achieve. And later on he went back and got his MBA. Okay. So he was, one of the things that really struck me was I remember reading a passage in one of his books where he said, I sat down in my cold, dingy apartment where I had a light bulb and a candle to warm myself. And I realized that no one is coming to the rescue. And that was the turning point for him.
Right.
That if it was going to be, it was up to him and he had to do it.
Okay.
Which I think is, a great epiphany.
Well, so let's talk about turning point for you. You started out,
okay.
You've been in martial art over 4 decades.
Yes.
You didn't start with Jeet Kune Do, I'm pretty sure.
I did not. I started, I took a few judo classes and I lasted about 3 months. I was a skinny 16-year-old kid and they were all big college guys and they would throw me and land on me and I realized that judo wasn't for me at that point. So the next thing I took was what was advertised as Chinese karate. and it was Kung Fu.
Right.
And then I found out more specifically, it was a form of Choi Li Fut called Boxing Choi Li Fut.
Mm-hmm.
Really powerful style. It taught me a lot about foundation, taught me a lot about patience,
Mm-hmm.
taught me a lot about discipline. And, you know, I stayed with that art for about 4 years or so. That's where I kind of cut my teeth.
Right.
But I knew who Dan Inosanto was. I wanted to train with Bruce Lee, even back then. Who my teacher hated Bruce Lee because he knew who he was, and they both lived in Hong Kong.
Right.
And they were Choi Li Fut and Wing Chun.
Wing
If you
Chun.
know anything about that,
Yeah.
I don't need to say anything else.
Right. Exactly.
I met Dan Inosanto in 1976 at the, it would have been the Torrance Academy. And I think they called it the Filipino Martial Arts Academy or something like that.
Yep.
It was the Torrance Academy.
What were you doing there?
Well, I lived in California, and I went down with my teacher, Bill Burke, who he was my wrestling, or my boxing coach.
See, I'm thinking that what you just described all took place in New York.
No,
You're
that all
not
took
a
place.
native New Yorker.
No, I am not. I was born in Los Angeles, California. I grew up in a small town north of Los Angeles, a beach town. I'm a surfer kid.
I had no idea.
And
Seriously.
yeah,
I had
and
no idea.
I have to thank the bullies in my life because that's who pushed me to start training in martial arts.
Okay. All right.
It
So
was-
you went down to the Kali Academy in Torrance in '76.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I met Sifu Inosanto, and I met Sifu Bastillo and Richard Bastillo. I filled out an application. I said, you know, I come down here to box. I would love to be. I was boxing at the Main Street Gym on Central Ave in Los Angeles. It was kind of a rough gym at the time.
Okay.
No longer there anymore. That was down by the Central Market. And my coach, Bill Burke, who's no longer with us, he introduced me to Dan Inosanto and several other people. Oh my gosh. He was the first person that I heard about Ajahn Chai Sirasut through as well.
Right.
Yeah, several people. Oh my gosh, it's just the number is bewildering.
Right.
But he had introduced me to Dan Inosanto, and I wanted to train there. I talked to Richard later on, and I said, Richard, why didn't you ever call me? You know, Richard Bastillo, and he goes, what? I go, I filled out an application. He goes, oh, I probably threw that away. If you didn't live in LA, I threw it away. But later on, I wasn't able to train with Sifu Inosanto until I was about 30 years old, which would have been 1984.
Now you were still playing.
I started training with him. I was in New York at that time.
See, that's how I know the story. So
Yes.
you grew up in New York.
Right. That's where I met you. I met you down at when Neil Khalif had Sifu in.
In 84?
It was somewhere in that time. It was probably 86 or 80.
No, that last week Neil was on the show with me, and I think now I got my timeline all screwed up. I think it was 89
That could be.
So you and I didn't meet in 84. Did you ever go out to St. Louis to the CMAA stuff?
I did not.
Huh.
I did not. No.
What about Timlin's Mid-Michigan stuff?
I never went to Michigan. I went to Ohio. There was a guy, Lou Woke, who he brought Sifu in, and that's where I met Don Guerin and Sarge and a lot of those people.
Right.
And then I went down to Pittsburgh to train with Don Guerin.
Okay.
And, excuse me, I went to the Smoky Mountain camp. And I also attended a camp. It was a Filipino and martial arts and Silat camp, but it was somewhere in the backwoods, Washington, PA or something. And, it was just brutal.
Yeah.
It was so hard.
Okay.
And that's where I kind of decided, wow, I'd already trained in Filipino martial arts before I started in Jeet Kune Do.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So then I guess we did meet in New York. So,
I remember because you were tall and slender and moved very fast. And I was like, man, who's this guy?
Huh. Well, obviously that was a long time ago. Because I'm no longer slender and I'm no longer fat. Right? Okay.
Well, I no longer have black hair either.
There you go. Yeah, because I remember you had the curly fro. You had a white afro, we call it, and then you also had the what do you call those?
Mustache.
Chops or what have you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the record, that hair was natural.
Oh, okay. So, besides Brian Tracy, who else in the marketing world have you studied?
Well, I had a student, Jim Bro, who's also one of my, he's a student and a teacher of mine. And I did the winning mindset with Jim, and he introduced me to Tony Robbins.
Okay.
Originally, I had known about Tony Robbins when he first came on the scene, and he had his first book come out. I think it was called Ultimate Power, and I read that, and I was like, wow, this opened my mind up.
Yeah.
And so those were my two greatest influences, I would say, and Bruce Lee.
Well, of course. So, which of those three influences propelled you into becoming an author yourself?
Well, I think I started becoming an author because I was frustrated as far as being able to direct some of the information that I had and to be able to resonate that with other people. So my two worst subjects in school were math and English. So being that persistent kid that I am, I tackled that.
Right.
And I am now very good at both.
Yeah.
And that's why I started writing, because I felt like, well, I wanted to express myself, but, you know, I failed English in high school. But in my defense, it was one of my first classes, and some days there was good surf.
Okay. Yeah, that's spoken like a true beach bum, right? Okay, so fill in the blanks for me. In '84, Inosano comes to New York. Let's go with that timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a school yet? When did that come?
I did not, no. I started my school around '86.
Okay.
And it was a small little place. I think it was about 1,400 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah. And
why? Why did you start a school?
Because my former career was I was a chef.
Really?
And I'd worked in restaurants. Yeah, I started my first restaurant at 23 years old in Santa Barbara, California. And I was trained as a chef, and I just decided that this was really hard, and I was a little disenchanted with it, and I wanted to go on to something else. So I decided, well, what else do I know? I know martial arts, and I know how to cook.
Right.
So I decided I would start a school.
And were you prepared for school ownership? Did you?
Well, I already had.
Did you know what you were doing?
4 years of background in working for myself as a business.
Right.
You know, the restaurant business is very difficult and very competitive. So
yeah,
if you can survive in business in the restaurant business, you can. I think you can do just about anything. Really.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I lost my lease in the restaurant and could not recover, and that's when I came to New York. Because we couldn't afford the property out there. It was just
right.
It was just incredible. It was so exorbitant. I mean, the Santa Barbara area was a building like that was a few $1 million even back then.
Yeah.
And so even my rent was high. But once we got that, and then I lost my lease and I didn't know what else to do. So I had a friend out in New York, and they said, "Hey, why don't you come out?" And I did, and I liked it. Mm-hmm. So here I am.
And that's it. Okay. So the school opens up in '86. You ran that for how long?
About 20 years.
Okay. Right.
And I moved to a different location. I ended up buying a building that was 5,300 square feet, and we had a huge back room with a full-size boxing ring. At that point, we taught Jungfan Jeet Kune Do, we taught Filipino martial arts, boxing, Muay Thai, and Jeet Kune Do grappling. And then I had a Tai Chi guy come in. Yeah, Jeet Kune Do grappling. Yes. And the influence, of course, was Larry Hartzell.
Right,
and, and also a huge influence from Eric Paulson.
Okay. Which you maintain to this day, because today you're a CSW representative.
Yes.
And you're also, you're part of the Pedro Sauer Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu lineage?
I'm actually in the Gracie lineage, so, but not under Pedro Sauer. I'm under Phil Meglarise. It goes basically Helson Gracie, Phil Meglarise, Ken Cronenberg.
Okay.
And Ken Cronenberg is my teacher, and Phil Meglarise is both my teacher and my student.
Really?
He's my student in Muay Thai, yes.
Ah.
And if you know anything about the Meglarise brothers, they're just animals.
Yeah.
These guys are unbelievably talented.
Okay. Who in the Jeet Kune Do world, when you started your school, who in the Jeet Kune Do world did you have business conversations with?
You mean as far as teachers or other people?
Yeah, like other school owners. I mean, was there ever a time where, yeah.
You're talking about my peers, yes.
Yeah.
Don Guerin was a pretty big influence on me. Yes.
Uh-huh.
I have to say that. And then a lot of people that were not Jeet Kune Do instructors, but were school owners, were also big influences on how I ran a school, the professionalism. I think that, to me, when you walk into a place, you can tell a lot about whether or not you want to be there by just observation.
Right.
And I saw I've seen a lot of schools, and some are very professionally run, and some are not so.
So like many of us, you had to go outside of the world of Jeet Kune Do when it came to some aspects of the business of running a school.
Well, yes, absolutely. And I think one of the biggest influences for me was just my friends that were in the martial arts that were so giving. You know, they're so generous. And I have to say, like you know, we're giving back. And that generosity is what I try to portray and give to my students on a daily basis. I think that was probably my biggest influence. I think a lot of that came from Sifu Inosanto, Sifu Francis Fong, who, you know, is a very generous man and just a wonderful human being. My other influences were Sifu Tim Tackett and Sifu Larry Hartzell. However, I've tried to train with just about every senior instructor in the JKD world I could. You know, just so that I can get a taste. Yeah.
Give us with that confluence of influences. Give us a tidbit of something that you originated in application in your school that you hadn't seen done anywhere else before.
Oh, okay. One of the big things that I always wanted to do is to allow students to come to the school anytime it was open. So I had structured classes, and then I had open mat every hour that we were open. So a student could come in, and I had an area for them to train in. And they could train. I could be teaching a Muay Thai class, and we could be sparring in the ring. There could be a guy working on the wooden dummy over in the corner. There could be 4 or 5 guys on the mat, you know, grappling. And for me, it didn't bother me that other people were doing things while I was teaching. To me, that was what I wanted. I wanted that activity. So I allowed students, when you were a student under me, you were allowed to come in anytime the school was open and train. And you didn't have to be in a structured class. You could come in, we had a video library, you could come in and watch that. You could lift weights, you could, and the place was big enough where we could do that. So I think that was probably pretty unique.
What about the nuts and bolts, the day-to-day running of the school? So, like, one of the conflicts that we've had in professional Jeet Kune Do would be, we didn't come up in a system that had a structured ranking system, and that's always been an area of contention. So tell me a little bit about the nuts and bolts of running a school. Concessions that you had to make, compromises that you had to make, the worries that you had about staying true to the art and stuff like that.
Well, I guess part of my character is I'm very organized, and it comes very easily for me. I don't know whether it's in my DNA or my background or my parents, my upbringing, but I am organized, and each of my curriculum is set, and I have it in an organized fashion where it's a progression. It's a developmental progression, and I am not afraid to change that. If I see something, I go, well, you know what? I think we can change this up a little bit. We can mold it. It's not written in stone, but I think that progression is important. One of the things that I notice that happens a lot in martial arts schools is everybody is kind of thrown in the same pond, and you're all taught the same things. And I know from jiu-jitsu, I'll be going I think next month I am testing, either next month or June, I'm on the roster to test for my brown belt in jiu-jitsu. And a lot of times we come into the class and there are white belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, black belts, all in the same room, learning the same thing.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's typical. And even if you say, well, we have a beginning group and then we have an advanced group, you still have variation in people's aptitude and abilities. So one of the things that I have always been a big proponent of is foundation. I think that a strong foundation, I learned this a long time ago, strong foundation, strong house. I see that lacking a lot in many schools and many arts, including Jeet Kune Do, where people, they want to learn all the fancy stuff, or they want to learn something really fast. And I have people tell me all the time, well, there's no blocking in Jeet Kune Do. All you do is hit. Well, that's great. Can you do that? I know I can't hit every time. Right. I would love to be able to. But that takes a level of skill and aptitude and attribute that is really, really difficult to maintain. Now, sometimes you have to block. That's just the way it is. But Jeet Kune Do, oh, well, we're supposed to hit and only hit. But I think maybe Bruce Lee could do it. I'm not sure. I wasn't there. Right. I don't know if he could do it every time. But I think sometimes you need to block. And, you need to have structure. And you need to practice the basic tools over and over again and maintain that. If you look at other sports, nobody's going to say, hey, coach, I don't need to throw free throws today. I got it. I'm hitting 80%. I got it. I'm a pro. They're going to say, get your butt out there and grab that ball and hit the free throws for an hour. I mean, that's fundamental. I call it picking up grounders. So in baseball, you're out there picking up grounders every day. You had batting practice every day. And I think that that's important. I think that basic throwing the punch every day, you should jab every day. You should kick every day. That you're training every day.
Is that part of what? Is that partially what Jeet Kune Do means to you?
Can you reiterate on that?
That daily practice.
The sharp.
Right. So you know how we talk, there's the quote about the daily decrease versus the daily increase. So the willingness to get out there every day and do something, is that an aspect for you of Jeet Kune Do philosophy, let's say?
I think it's crucial. I think when we talk about minimizing, I think we also have to minimize movement, but we have to sharpen. I think sharpening is crucial. It is the key. And it's not something, I mean, think about it. If you step away from it, you can feel it. On the mat, if I don't grapple and I don't spar, which we call rolling or grapple, for 2 or 3 weeks, man, I am getting crushed out there. I know I have already dropped down. So I have to maintain that sharpness. And I think there was I don't know who said it, but I think it was paparazzi. I don't even know what I'm going to say. One of the famous opera singers said, if I don't practice for 1 day, I notice a difference. If I don't practice for 2 days, the media notices it.
Okay, I'm here. So I don't know what happened there, but it might be a sign for us to speed this thing up.
Well, I'm sideways, but as long as everybody else can see me, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you're vertical with me.
Okay.
Right. So here's what I want to ask you. Martial arts movies. Did you grow up on the kung fu films?
Yes. My first teacher loved to go to the kung fu films. He would take me down to Chinatown in Los Angeles. We would eat dinner, and then we'd go out to the kung fu films.
Can you remember a favorite from back in that era?
Well, most of them were subtitles, so they weren't in English, so I don't know. But once I saw Five Fingers of Death.
Yeah.
And then I saw, I think what was referred to as The Big Boss. Okay. I was hooked.
That was it. Yeah. I always tell people I grew up on the kung fu films, but in Barbados, which, like Hong Kong, is a British colony. So we didn't have to go through the subtitle thing. They dubbed them in English and shipped them to the other British colonies. And so
that's amazing.
Yeah, we got all the original names, but you guys got the Americanized titles. Right. Yeah, so we never had that confusion about Fist of Fury and Chinese Connection and what have you. We got all the original titles. Besides Dan Inosanto and the Jeet Kune Do notables that we've mentioned already in the dialogue, martial arts heroes. Give me a couple and tell me why.
Martial arts heroes. Okay. Yeah. One of my very favorite is Jackie Chan. And the reason I like Jackie Chan is because he does everything. He is the real deal. He goes out there and he does it, and then he fails, and then he does it again, and he does it again. And he, I think he performs from the heart. So I have always liked Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
Brandon Lee. I like Brandon Lee's movies. The 2 movies that I watched anyway. And of course, a lot of the stunt people that you don't see, but they're behind the scenes. Jeff Amata, Chad Stileski. I like the new Keanu Reeves movies. I especially like the first one because he had when they killed his dog, that was it. Those, I would say that's probably, those are my top.
Okay. All right. So I have this. Show me yours.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's my
Okay, so
last.
you didn't get my message. I wanted you to be able to put on each. Right. Show me book number one.
I have this. This is book number one.
There we go.
Can you see it? Okay. All right. And
Yeah,
look at that hair, huh?
Yeah. There you go.
And I started reading. I started writing that book from all of my notes, and I organized it into lessons, into 12 lessons. And I felt that one of the things that I saw that was missing from a lot of books is you read a book, especially if it's an instructional or nonfiction book, and you get to the end of the chapter and you're like, well, now I have to go back and underline all these things that were key points. So that was one of the things I tried to put in all of my books was key points at the end of the chapter. And when I wrote that book, I started it in about 97, and I think it got published in right at the beginning of 2000.
Okay. All right. Show me
and
book number two.
I did all the on that first book, we did all of the photo shoot in one day.
Wow.
Which was pretty difficult. Yeah.
Wow.
The second book, Dan Inosanto said to me one time at a seminar, he said, Kevin, I really like your book. The first time I read it, I thought it was good. The second time I read it, I thought, you know what? This is very well organized. The third time I read it, I said, this is excellent. I haven't even read my book 4 times. You read it 4 times. And he one time he made at a seminar I attended, he said that your book is just as valuable as the Tao Jeet Kune Do, and I just about fainted. I see myself as a pretty basic author, and he said, you know, I would really love to see you write a follow-up. So that's why I started this book.
Okay.
I don't know how, because I'm sideways, I apologize to the people that are watching, but my phone is sideways and so am I, so I'm trying to do my best. But this was the second book, and this is a little bit more, I think it's more advanced, and there is an awful lot about, you know, the structural part of Jeet Kune Do. And one thing that really struck me, I had one of my teachers tell me, they said structure, position, execution. Every martial art, that's what you should remember. So first you have to develop your structure. Because if you don't develop your structure's not strong, your position will be invalid. In other words, you won't be able to attack or defend or evade. And then the third one is execution. And if your position is invalid, then your execution will fail. And I always try to keep that in mind as much as possible. I like some of the tidbits of thinking about, well, what makes a powerful technique? And I know from my boxing that when I turned my hip over and I turned my shoulder over and I shifted my weight, I got the most power. Guys fell down when I did that. So I said, man, what else is there? Well, you know, there's that body turn. There's that weight shift, and then there's that extension. And then if you add speed to those 3 things, you get even more power. So those were things that I think I would like to call those Jeet Kune Do concepts. You know that sometimes that word gets used an awful lot and thrown out there, but to me that's a concept that you can apply to any martial art.
Thing, Kevin.
And
here's the thing. I'm going to take it further. Because as I hear you talk about that stuff, I'm not even thinking martial art. I'm thinking recipe for business, recipe for life.
100%.
right? So,
And I think there's
yeah.
there's a universal
So now
crossover
you
there.
showed us volume one. Exactly. Exactly. See, and that's actually why I was excited about being able to talk to you, because I think that you were one of those people who has blended the psychological and the physical aspects of Jeet Kune Do really, really almost seamlessly. So now show me, I don't know what the chronological order was, but show me
Of my books?
book number, which
The Winning
that's the
Mindset.
one. Yeah.
And I wrote that with Jim Bro, who is an instructor under Francis Fong.
Right.
And he's coming out with a new book,
Yep.
actually, based on his Navy SEAL training camp that he went to. After that,
Okay.
I wrote The Mind Game of MMA.
I have his Path to
Which-
Mastery. Yeah.
Oh yeah, very good. He's a very good writer. And then I went on to write The Mind Game of Competition, which is basically the same book, but for sports. Because as you know, people in other sports will not read martial arts books.
Right.
So I wrote a book, and I just changed the structure of it because the principles are universal. A good example of in sports and in martial arts. So one day I came to this epiphany that I was sparring with somebody, and through my timing and my agility, I was moving, I was outpointing this guy, and he was much younger than me, and I think he was very, very good. And I realized that I wanted to be in balance at all times, and I wanted my opponent to be out of balance as often as possible. And I started thinking about it, and I go, well, that's not only just martial arts, that's every sport. You want your opponent out of balance as much as possible, and you want to achieve balance as often as much as possible. And it
Yes.
gets to fruition. So that, once again, these things just smack me in the face. And I have this need to put them in writing and to put them in books and to teach and share them with people. A big thing to me about Jeet Kune Do is Bruce Lee's agility. Excuse me?
You've done an excellent job at putting.
Oh, thank you.
You've done an excellent job putting that information out there.
Thank you. Distance management. That's a big term you're starting to hear more and more about. I've always believed that distance management in fighting is crucial. The agility is really the key, because if you have that footwork and that agility, you're not going to. Hey.
Okay. Third time's the charm. So I'll actually I'll pull these down. I'll splice them together, and then I'll re-upload to Facebook so that we have a seamless thing. So I wanted to ask you about one more thing. The Northeast Conference. How did that come about? How long did it run for? What were the main takeaways from that experience? And then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. Well, I had gone down to the Smoky Mountain camp, as I said.
Yeah.
And the training down there was amazing. It was so hard, and it was all day long. And of course, there were some phenomenal teachers down there.
Right.
And I had talked to a couple of them and said, what do you think about if I did something like this in the Northeast?
Which is cooler.
And they said, that would be great.
Yeah.
Well, being that I was in the restaurant business and hospitality industry, it was very easy for me to organize.
Yeah.
Once again, I have a very organized mindset. And so when I did that, I started in 1990, and we went for 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had such a great time. I mean, we had Sifu Inosanto, we had Sifu Francis Fong, we had Sifu Larry Hartzell, and we had Ajahn Chai. And then we had a few other people come in and teach smaller classes as well. I had a bladesmith. We had some full contact collie sparring. So it was really a fun event, and where I did it was I chose a all-girls college on the side of a lake near Ithaca, New York, called Wells College. And we basically bunked everybody in the dorms, and then I had the Marriott Corporation come in, and they did the food.
Right.
Because to me, food is the most important part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Wally J told me one time, you can't run a high-performance engine on kerosene.
Right.
So I think it's really important. So I brought in, I paid a little extra money, and we had a great camp though. And
Yeah.
I think it just got to the point where I was taking on so many projects, and this is very typical of my character.
Yeah.
I brought on so many projects that something had to give. And I just thought, I think I'm just going to try to bring the instructors in one by one again. And but we did it for 8 years. And a lot of people remember that camp.
Excellent.
I have an awful
Excellent.
lot of people say, why don't you do a camp again? Well, I'm doing a little mini weekend this weekend. In October, the 27th and 28th, I am bringing Sifu Inasanto and Sifu Francis Fong in to teach weekend seminar.
Okay.
So Sifu Inasanto will teach first, and then Sifu Francis Fong. So I'm going to bring at least 2 of them together.
Okay.
Next weekend, also, I'm just going to give this announcement, unbridled. I'm bringing in Sifu Taki Kimura in next weekend. And he's coming to Syracuse, and he's going to teach a weekend seminar. I was approached by by Sifu Taki and Andrew to host them, and I said, absolutely, I would be honored to do that. So I have his shirt here, in honor of him.
Very good. Very good. Okay, and tell people who will be watching this what's a best way to get in touch with you.
The best way to get it, you can go to my website, kevinseaman.net. You can see me on Facebook, of course. .net. You can see me on Facebook, and you can go to kevin@thewinningmindset.com. I also have a site called the JKE Matrix. And, so those are basically the best ways. I'm pretty good at answering people.
Okay.
I think that's important. I always appreciated when you would come up and speak to them, or you would try to get a hold of them, if they would actually talk to you. And so I try to do that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Kevin, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
There's a lot more you and I about. All right. So I look forward to doing this a second time with you, maybe even a third time.
Awesome. I would love that.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Hey,
and
thank you.
It's been fantastic. Thank you. And all my best to everybody that viewed. Have a fantastic day.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.